Can you hear me? Loud and clear? Thank you. Thank you very much for this beautiful introduction, Emma. Thanks for having me here, for having the work here. It's truly an honor. I've enjoyed every moment in San Luis Obispo. It feels like home. It feels too good, I might come back. I'm not sure you want me back. I'm usually known as the loud Arab in the room. But it's been good. God has been good. Life has been good. I'm honored to be here. I'm glad there are people at the front row. Most of the time, people stay away from me, like, ooh. Yeah, so thank you for occupying business class. What time is it? 5:40. Okay. You give an architect a microphone and tell him to talk. Bad idea. All right. Homeland insecurity. Where do you start? Where do we all start? We're living in a crazy world. We're living in an ever-changing, fast-paced world that wants to boil you down to just a label. Being migrant, Syrian, Muslim, Mexican, whatever. That's like, I feel like, politicians now want to boil us down to a label, as though labels describe us completely as human beings. I happen to have several labels. I'm Muslim, Arab, Syrian, named Mohamad, raised in Saudi Arabia with a beard. You can imagine my security background check takes a little bit longer than usual. And I often get randomly selected in the airport, But my favorite part is when I go through the x-ray, and with the grumpiest ever looking officers, I come close to them and I say, I didn't smile, can we do it again? And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how they crack up. The grumpiest, biggest looking, oh, what? Oh man, oh, you're so funny, man. Let's go. You're good. All right. Thank you. And we've also, heard the propaganda and the rhetoric out there for Syrians and immigrants and refugees. It used to be, when I came here 18 years, 20 years ago, as a student, people asked me, where are you from? I would say, from Damascus, from the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. What are you talking about? It's in the Bible, man. Well, today I wonder what comes to mind. Is this what comes to mind? Is this my residence of choice? Is this, you could laugh, that's okay. Is this my luxury vehicle of choice? What context are we working with here? So, what is Syria? Well, Syria is a beautiful country. I sadly grew up away from Syria for many years. It's not until my father retired, we moved back in 1999, that I discovered my roots. So this is a panorama that I took from Qasyun mountain, a mountain that overlooks Damascus. And if I zoom in, you could see the density of this beautiful city. That red dot there is Old Damascus. And Old Damascus is the old quarters of the city where my father was born. So I got to do a little bit of, root finding. Old Damascus has the Umayyad Mosque, a structure so old it used to be a temple, a Roman temple at some point. And I started walking, the streets of Old Damascus and discovering Palmyra and discovering all this world heritage. You walk the streets of Old Damascus, you look up, you see a church right next to a mosque, a synagogue right next to a gallery with nude sculptures, right next to a Shiite shrine. And I'm going, of course, for somebody that was raised in Saudi Arabia in the 80s, I'm going, what is this diversity? What is this coexistence? I'm not used to this. Churches right next to mosques, what are you doing? Mother Mary's Church, Umayyad Mosque. I go into Mother Mary's Church, and there's the clergy of the church singing for peace and coexistence, side by side with their Muslim counterparts. This was well before the war, and it was like day to day. So I recorded. I think the good thing of not growing up in your country is that everything is new to you and everything is mesmerizing. Of course, my friends were looking at me like, what the heck are you doing? This is day to day. Put your phone down. I got mesmerized by normal people. Just the smiles, the faces, the expressions, I started thinking, what has he thought, what has he seen in his life? What is that what's been hidden behind that look, right? His smile. This guy is a merchant that sells bread. He buys bread in bulk and bags it individually and sells it to you, so you don't have to wait 5-10 minutes in line. And he probably makes 5 cents profit, But I became the guy that looks at his smile and he says, wow, this guy is content, he's happy. And how much do we have? And we still don't feel that we have enough, right? Oftentimes I would ask my brother-in-law to pose for me, not because I'm in love with his face, it's because I want to go for that moment. And if I would just come up to people and just go, thank you, it would be awkward, right? And so that I grew very fond of architecture, of people, of culture. The courtyard houses. The courtyard houses. Have you heard of the courtyard houses? In the Middle East, we're known for the courtyard houses, particularly in Spain, where it came from Morocco, where it came from Damascus and Aleppo. These houses are so gorgeous from the inside, so elaborate. Public sphere is down here, private sphere is up there. And the entryway is like that. And I said to my 80-year-old father, don't tell him I told you his age, I will die. He grew up in this. And I said, Dad, Habibi, I'm an architect. I design a lot of fancy stuff. How in the heck a house could be so elaborate outside, inside, and it looks like that from the outside? And he said, well, son, back in the days, it was unacceptable for wealthy families to show off their wealth onto their neighbors. From the outside, from the exterior, we're all equal. The rich and the poor. And I said, okay, how did you find out who needed help in your community? He said, each neighborhood had a committee of people that would walk around at nights on garbage days, inspecting people's garbages. Rich families would have remnants of rice and bone and meat, and poor families would have nothing. And it repeats this rhythm over and over, and surely, a few days later, a sack of goods would show up discreetly against the door. Nobody saw who gave, nobody saw who took, preserving people's dignity. Why do I tell these stories? Well, we are now one of the largest nations that is exporting refugees that are living on public assistance. It is embedded in our cultural DNA. Very hard for us to not earn our take. Very hard for us to take help from anybody. We will stay quiet, we will endure. So it's usually what comes to mind when you're helping a refugee and immigrant, just like, here's food, here's money, get out of my way, right? It hurts. So, and that's what the nation has seen for the past 8 or 9 years. And that's what I've been seeing in my Facebook feed and my tweets and my everything. This is what day-to-day news was coming through. These beautiful old cities are now going into rubble. The Umayyad Mosque in Aleppo, that minaret is 1,100 years old. 1,100. Today it stands like this. Or like that. When we all saw Notre Dame burn, we all felt a pain because a part of our history is being wiped away, and rightfully so. How does it feel to see 1,100 years old worth of architecture and archaeology being blown up in existence when you make a living as an architect and you know the feasibility of something like this getting rebuilt, ever getting funded, and if it's even documented so we can rebuild it to begin with? It's not. Old souks from Aleppo to Homs to Damascus, a World Heritage Site, the souk of Aleppo that once sent the best and finest silk and jewelry makers and rug makers to New Jersey and New York. In fact, if you know any Syrians from New York, you can tell from their last name what they used to do. And a lot of them came from Aleppo. And of course, the gruesome non-stop daily news of a mother taking her last breath next to her son, a kid having to leave school because he's the only breadwinner now to the family, selling candy and so on, or a father coming to a deceased child because the bomb fell. So that's the worst of the show. I'm sorry. Well, who's taking my turn? It's not fair. So, who are Syrians? The only way I can bring this home to my audience is to share my personal story. It's to share my family story. I cannot speak on behalf of millions of people, but I can share our own story, hoping that people can relate to it. My father, Dr. Hafez, and my mom, Sana, like any people, like any parents, have their crazy moments and have their nice moments. We're a family of 6, 4 siblings, 2 parents, 2 generations. My older siblings, Ra'ed and Reem, 14 and 10 years older than me, and this monkey, nice t-shirt, and my youngest sister, Mace. Because we have 2 generations, I've been coming to the United States since the 1980s, when they went to college, when my siblings went to college. I used to be the young monkey that would run around their college campus going, hey, my brother is studying in Iowa State. That's fun. They took us to Disney World, and then time repeats. And it's got time for me to take my nieces to Disney World, which we did a few years ago. I was the kid that never played sports, only played with Legos. My family would say, what do you want for your birthday? Legos. What do you want for graduation? Legos. What do you want for anything? Legos. You don't want to go outside, kick ball? No, Legos. It will make sense in a minute. So he graduated as a computer engineer, she's an interior designer, and I'm a silly architect, all from Iowa State, and that's the connection. I like showing this photo because in this photo you see my 2 sisters today who wear the hijab, my mom who doesn't wear the hijab, right? My mom, my sisters, my siblings. And, she doesn't wear the hijab because, it's a personal choice. She's not punished to not wear it, they're not oppressed to wear it. End of story. Right? In one family, we have the 2 examples. So my dad realized that his kids are now educated in the West. There's no chance they're going to be going back home and living full-time with him in Damascus. So he said, fine, I'm going to invest all my savings in this beautiful house to make a vacation destination for the 4 siblings of you. You're going to promise me to come visit every Thanksgiving, every Christmas break. You're going to come here, bring your families. I'm going to make it a nice big house. Fine. For many years, this garden just had endless and endless and endless dinner parties and family gathering. And we're like, we're Syrian. We're like Italians. We're like Greek. We're like your big fat Greek wedding. Really, everybody you see here is either an uncle or a cousin or an aunt. This is direct family. And my mom cooked this whole meal. And if you come to my mom and you say, you don't eat meat or you're vegetarian, she's going to look at you funny and she was going to say, what do you mean you don't eat meat? Don't worry, I cook lamb. So that's, my aunts, my uncles. You can imagine as a little kid that grew up in Saudi Arabia away from all of this, coming back to this root, a network of family. I'm going, okay, this is me. These are my family. I missed you. Where have you been the past 15 years? Today, the house sits like this. The living room sits like this, And of course, the silly architect in me fusses about the paint peeling off and the architecture falling apart. But in retrospective, we have been extremely blessed to have survived, to have had my parents' green cards pull them out of the country when we needed. Does not mean that we were better than those who couldn't. Does not mean they are lesser than us. It puts a responsibility on my shoulder to speak on their behalf, to humanize, to tell their story, to relate to them. So we grew up in Saudi Arabia, as I said, but talking about Saudi Arabia in the 80s and the 70s, you would think it's a closed space. It's not. I grew up with more Americans and Brits than Saudis. We had Christians, Jews, Hindus from all over the world around us. I was the only kid among Sudanese. So we grew up in Saudi Arabia. We're from Syria. My dad studied medicine and worked 22 years in Germany. We came to Iowa State to study. My sister resided in Chicago. I live now in Connecticut. My brother lives in Dubai, and my sister is in Sweden. We, as a family of 6, we have collectively visited the red dots. We have collectively, become friends, really close friends with people from the blue dots. So, where's home? Where's home? That is home. That is home. Home is where peace and tranquility is. Yes, Connecticut is a dear home. I'm a proud Syrian American today, but Damascus is home as well. Those two don't clash with each other. They thrive off of each other, right? We all have our own backgrounds that makes us who we are. So, background done, day job. I am an architect, sadly. Don't tell my job, don't tell my boss. Graduated, went to work for a firm in New Haven. We specialize in skyscrapers. My boss designed the Petronas Towers in Malaysia. Those 2 corn cobs. He did it when he was in his 30s. So the guy is big on sending young architects to the deep water and seeing if they sink or swim. And he did that with me. I swam, alhamdulillah. So my last project was a 60-story tower in Houston, Texas. And you could see when I was young and naive and clean-shaven, and people might have think that I was Italian or something, flying around, designing buildings, going 300 miles an hour. My first inclination when this building took 6, 7 years of my life working on it every day, flying to Houston every week, back and forth, meeting engineers, meeting consultants, planning every nook and cranny of the building, where the floor joint is, what kind of marble there is, and if I'm going to accept the marble or reject it because it's got a little fossil in the corner, and we cannot have that. It's crappy. Until one day, I'm sitting here with my general contractor, also, I was clean-shaven in my suit, corporate architect, and the nice thing about being a design architect, you get to be king for the day. Nothing gets approved without your permission. As a design architect, you have to approve everything in the building. And this dude, contractor big, comes in. Who the hell do I got to talk to get this ceiling approved around here? How did I do? Good? Y'all, well, no offense, I love Texas, by the way. That's another story. But my general contractor says, Mohamad Hafez, lead designer, right there. Talk to him. Guy big comes to me, looks down. Your name is Mohamad? Yes, sir. You designed this thing? Yes, sir. You're Muslim? Yes, sir. Well, I thought y'all just specialize in bringing them towers down. I laughed, he laughed, I shrugged the corn, we shrugged it, but it turned a bulb inside me here, right? There was a point where my life had so much contrast. I was a corporate architect. I would fly first class one day and come home to pray with my siblings and with my neighbors, immigrants and refugees. Things would be said in Houston around dinner tables that should not be said at all. And I would go back to with my friends and families from all over the world. Yeah? That high contrast just went bananas. I would open my news and I would see home being destructed and everything being blown out of existence. And I would show up Monday morning to my coworkers saying, "God damn it, the coffee is cold!" And you want to go, "That's your dilemma? That's your dilemma. The coffee is cold. That's your dilemma right now, Drew, huh? Well, let me tell you, half of Aleppo almost got wiped out last night." You can't say that. You become the angry Arab, right? So what I did is I took to my sculptures. That was what you see in your gallery. It was a cathartic moment for me. But that was also the moment when the world kind of dug me out of my hole and discovered 12 years worth of work. And it all started because of a silly passport, a label, the Syrian passport, royal Syrian passport. I couldn't go home for 10 years because I was Syrian Muslim Mohammed. Back in the Bush era, there was a travel ban in place. Nobody knows about it. They didn't call it travel ban. They were smart. They called it NSEERS, National Security Entry Exit Registration System. Sounds scary enough? Well, I had to register with the FBI every time I left my college in Iowa, every time I switch addresses, every time I find a new job, every time I want to go back home. My background check for my visa, instead of taking 1 week max, it took a year and a half. So I learned quickly that that house, that dinners with the family, that I'm not going back there anytime. This is not the war. This is 15 years before the war. Okay? Well before the war. So I got here extremely homesick. What are you going to do? You're an architecture student. What do you have at hand? Model making. So I started making home. I started making old Damascus. I would cast them from plaster and found objects. I would go around and pick up a whole bunch of model making tools that my colleagues would throw away, and I would say, I could make something out of this. And I would take it. I would cast plaster. I would make more of stuff with it. And I'd noticed that, okay, I'm spending 20 hours on these pieces, but I don't mind. It's very nice. It's very therapeutic. It's very cathartic. Of course, back then I didn't even know what cathartic meant. But anyway, somebody had explained it to me. I made art. I'd make art. I'd make art. I'd make art for 10 years. I would have a studio side by side with my architectural job in secret. In secret. I did not care because it was a personal thing. It fed my soul. It kept me home. So I showed up Monday morning and my coworker said, "God damn it, the coffee is cold." I'm like, "Yeah, John, damn it, it's cold. Let's make a new batch." And I started getting interested in calligraphy, in graffiti, how humans leave their footprints on architecture, how we leave our mark on architecture, on our built environment. If you live in an apartment and you move out after 2 years, you're leaving holes where the pictures used to hang, you're leaving scuff marks where the couch used to sit. What does a civilization leave after living there in 2,000 years in one spot? How do you create that in art? Well, you mimic it. You have to find real decay. You find real time. None of us can replicate real decay, right? No matter how good of artists we are. You know, something that is rusted in an antique shop, God knows how long that's been sitting there. I want it. Why? Because that's real time, right? It might be a bottle cap today, but when I'm done with it, it's going to be a chandelier that has a patina that looks of 100-year-old patina. And it looks real, and it looks honest. And that's, why my studio looks like this. And the wall of my studio is the wall of ingredients here. I'm not a hoarder. Wallahi. It's organized. Trust me. It's organized by color. I have gold bins. If I want something gold, I'll go to the gold bin. If I want something red, I'll go to the red bins. I have radio bulbs, wood, clock compartments, dried furniture, dried plants, antique furniture, frames, plaster, paint, oil paint, acrylic paint, house paint, all sort of tapes, all sort of glues, all sort of fasteners, all sort of metals, all sort of rusted metals. It's like cooking. Right? You go into, who likes cooking here? Okay, who pride themselves as being really good cooks? I could tell, huh? How does your pantry look? Like that. Exactly. You're going to have stuff that you never know when you're going to use it, but there's going to be a dish where you're going to need a pinch of cardamom and a pinch of turmeric, but you're going to have stocked that thing for 5 million years in your kitchen by the time you're going to come to use it. That's how we make art. It's like cooking. Yeah? I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, from here to there, here to there, here to there. So at the end of the day, you get pieces like this, where I zoom in, you see minarets and mosques and so on, but I can't take too much credit for it because I did not make that minaret speaker. That's a Gulf tea. I did not make that speaker. It was an acorn sprayed gold. That's a radio compartment that I took apart, and so on. It's a bunch of nails, a bunch of chairs, and so that's how these things come together. And of course, I'm not going to go drilling through each one of these because you have them hanging 50 feet away from here. You can go enjoy them in person. But what I learned when the war happened, as I was remodeling and cathartically remodeling the destruction and getting that energy out, I said, well, you can't be pessimistic. You have to keep optimism. You have to plant hope for the generations to come. How do you plant hope? How do you understand the moment you're living in, but also plant hope? I use verses from the Qur'an, from the Bible. Right? Our region is a region of believers, whether they're Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. We have scriptures. So I spray paint like a miniature activist. Do not think that God is unaware of what the wrongdoers are committing. Surely there will come a day where they answer to him for their actions. That's the way for me to give back to my country, to my people that have suffered, to say, look at the big picture. There is a day where judgment, where true judgment will be served. How do you criticize politicians and dictators when you come from a region where that's not quite allowed, where you can get in big trouble? Well, His Royal Highness, His army, us, and he uprooted us as though we are no longer existent. His Royal Highness is not a phenomenon only for the Middle East. His Royal Highness is all over the world. A lot of their Royal Highnesses feel they're empowered enough to sit in their toilets, tweet away things that offend millions and millions of people, as though the plumbing coming down from their toilet is blessing us every morning. And of course, we're that small. His bathroom is that big because he's His Highness. He needs attention. And so again, 50 feet from here, His Majesty sits in your beautiful school. And His Majesty here, as just a note, is a completely photoshopped piece, is a completely photoshopped figure. Any similarities with any living or dead people is a complete and total coincidence. Thank you. His Majesty. Making more and more and more art. Now infusing audio that I took from my last visit to Syria. And then I got to a point where my mom just said, Mohamad, stop making dark stuff. Go make happy stuff. Okay, Mama. I'm serious. Go make happy stuff. Okay, Mama. We're like Italians. Your mom says, put it down, go make something else. You will go make something else. You know? I'm telling you. I told my southern friends if they knew the similarities between their culture and our culture, they would take us up in hugs. The way, sir, ma'am, you know, same thing. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You don't talk back to your mom, you don't yell at her, you don't call her with her first name. She says, Mohamad, when is your exhibit opens? Mom, Monday, but it's weekend, Mom, they're closed now. No, don't care, my friends are coming. Call your friend at the gallery, have them open it. Yes, ma'am. True story. True story. So, Mohamad, make nice stuff. Yes, ma'am. So I went back to the nostalgic era where that salon I showed you from our house with a lot of French Baroque furniture, very common in Syria. I get inspired and I buy French Baroque frames that are 3 feet tall, and I model inside of these places of old Damascus and old Aleppo. And the students I was talking to earlier today about photography and presentation, this is where it all makes so much sense, and it's worth it. Why? Because when you professionally shoot the work, and the detail will pay off. Your human eye, no matter what profession you have, will see what it wants to see, right? Because you've seen so much in your lifetime, you're going to say, what city is this from? And you'll be like, it's not from anywhere. It's hanging on a wall at Cuesta College, 2 feet from here. What? And so that's my trick, right? That's when the piece is done. When you can show it to somebody and they say, hey, is that from the Middle East? Which city is that from? And of course, to me, you know, it sends me to this majestic, romantic, dreamlike world where none of these are real places. So I get to play, you know, designer for the day and, you know, say, okay, the naughty kid did not wipe his feet, so I would make up stories, or he kicked open that door every day, or, you know, you just have to talk about, have a conversation of how the humans leave their footprint in these things without actually having a figure. So, up until that point, all of my work was extremely personal. Was just for me. Do the artwork at night, show up Monday morning, skyscrapers. Artwork at night, Monday morning, skyscrapers. And I'm not going to preach to you like I was this wise or had this sort of activism edge to me. If you stood in my way when I was designing towers, I would not be pleasant. I was 300 miles an hour guy, and architecture and corporate, and that's the way it is. We take it for given. There's something programmed in us that crises are over there, they're not here, right? They're outside of the city, they're not here. My family's okay, they're not here. Until guess what? It shows up onto your doorstep. That crazy dude that I told you about, my brother-in-law, who poses for me, a fantastic architect as well. I was so inspired by his work in the Middle East at such a young age that I was this close to moving back and joining him. And while I was on a business trip in Italy one year, buying marble for that silly tower in Houston, speaking of marble, he had a factory of marble mosaics on the outskirts of Damascus. He also had the Syrian passport. And if you had the Syrian passport in the Syrian war, no matter what degree you have, no matter what your finances are, no matter who you are, you're just a label. Syrian refugee, Syrian immigrant, no entry permitted. None of these countries around us would issue you a visa. You'd say, I can move my practice, I can build businesses in your country, I can bring movement to your economy. No, you're going to come here and take our wealth and our jobs and take it all. Sounds familiar? So your only way was to go to Turkey, and from Turkey you hire a smuggler for $10,000 a person to put you on a little dinky float across the Mediterranean in the middle of the night to cross the Mediterranean. So he went from there to there. And he called me. He said, Mohamad, I arrived in Sweden. Come see me. And I said, what? You arrived where, you crazy nut? Last time I saw you and I left you in Damascus. What are you talking about? He said, I can't discuss too much detail. Come see me. Fine. I wrap up my trip in Italy. I fly immediately to him to Sweden. That was him when he first arrived with his Italian faux passport and a photo of the things that he had packed in him in the boat. And I say, what did you pack? You know, he was like, you know, my paperwork, my driver license. I was like, why is it in saran wrap? He's like, you idiot, it needs to be waterproof. Oh, sorry. What else did you pack? My passport, my ID, my children photos. And when he said my children photos, I felt like a wall of brick had hit me at 300 miles an hour. Because now those refugees that I was hearing about in the news are no more than my own nephew and niece. And that's where it hit home, right? I was very touched with the refugee crisis, undoubtedly, but when you see your own in a refugee camp in the middle of Sweden, crisis hits you at a different level. The world wakes you up. So he got settled in Virestad, a little town in the middle of Sweden. This is where he was in a little refugee camp, and you can see him very happy to see me. I was still in shock. There's a perception that refugees and immigrants come from nothing, from no established lives, from nothing to lose. They come in here to take our jobs and money, and great, yeah. And they live in tents overseas and have no family whatsoever. As an architect, I'm always interested in scale, comparison, scale. Virestad, Damascus. Virestad, Damascus. Virestad is a single street town in Sweden, one street, 4 houses, abandoned school turned into a refugee center, and a local market slash Walmart slash Home Depot slash bakery slash cigarettes slash whatever you need, right there. The abandoned school where he got settled, the whole footprint of the whole town is almost as big as the courtyard of the Umayyad Mosque I was showing you earlier. And I thought I'm going to find a lot of Syrians and Iraqis with him because that's the flavor of the day. Well, it turns out I met all of these nationalities over there. I realized what a global crisis this was. This is not just Syrians and Iraqis and Afghanis fleeing war. This is so global and so vastly huge that our politicians are boiling it down to just Iraqis and Syrians. I met Russians there. I met Chechens. I met Palestinians. So I came back, shattered, wanted to, take my art to the world, make it count, do something effective with it. How are we doing on time? 10 minutes. Desperate Cargo. And the piece there, the float, is designed to show you, actually it's designed to be hung upside down like that. The way I'm showing it in your school is the first time ever shown it in this way. But in the original design, it's designed so that you understand what is the state of mind that pushes somebody to put their 2- and 3-year-old in a refugee dinghy across the Mediterranean in the middle of the winter, in the middle of night, knowing that 50% chance that boat is capsizing. What is that situation on ground that puts that sort of emotional baggage in their physical baggage and they schlep it around the world? What did life look like a moment before the bomb had fell and shattered the facade off of this building while the birthday party was still going there? What is that state of mind when we are hearing powerful people paint millions and millions of people with one wide brush stroke as murderers and rapists and people, homeland security threat, and so on and so on? And then I realized that these things are taking 10 months, 11 months, 12 months to build. But if I get a reading like that, then that makes my day. Because now, my fellow art colleagues, art is educational. Art is a tool very powerful that can reach and break limits and can reach such a wide audience, from 7-year-old to 75-year-old, without me opening my mouth. That's the power of art, to build the common denominator and a wide connection between us all, right? So the work eventually went from very nostalgic, very detailed work to work that talks about collective humanity, where you look at why have you forsaken us, you see, oh, a Muslim woman in front of a mihrab praying, hijabi woman. It's not until you go across the piece and look back that you realize you're looking at Mother Mary. And so is that not a hijab now? How is that different? And so it becomes a different situation that's in front of a nave And it allows me to have these thorny conversations where I say, yeah, Muslims believe in Mother Mary and Jesus. Of course we do. There's 2 chapters in the Qur'an about Mother Mary. The whole chapter is about her. I can't just say this without art, right? It allows me to give you these sound bites. It allows me to say no Muslim can call himself a Muslim without believing in Mother Mary and Jesus as a prophet. Over the 20 years of my art went from nostalgic phases, detailed, to respond to the turmoil in the region, details of life and happiness and coexistence that were taking place, to complete destruction, complete demolition, to reflecting my homesickness, to reflecting the nostalgia in all of us. And speaking about the nostalgia in all of us, I've been doing I've been doing workshops with schools, with high schools, to highlight the common experience of home. What is home to you? So each one of my students here had sculpted personally over the semester their own experience of home. And these are not Syrian students. They're from all over the world. They're from America, Midwest, from Alaska. And little they knew is that I would take all of their stuff, put it on this huge wall at the end, and tie it with laundry lines and lights, and put MP3 players where the girl I recorded, one of my students says, well, I remember from home, my dad and my mom are divorced, and that's why they're 2 different, rooms in this house, and they're very different, and I have 17 different addresses that I lived at. But when you stand in front of this piece, you look at a diverse world that we all live in. How do you educate in a day and age where diversity is seen as negative? That us versus them, right? We're gonna build a wall. It's us, it's America, as though there's one flavor to this nation. And I tell these kids, I say, look, what makes this beautiful installation is not my work, not your individual work, but this collection of work. This is our world. This is the world that I'd like you to go live in and strive. Don't listen to the junk in the media. Don't listen to the rhetoric. And those were my students, right? How do you educate today? Speaking of education and art, how do you educate about coexistence? How do you educate about respect? How do you educate about seeing an eye to an eye as a human? And of course, the media is appreciated, but they always paint me as the guy that's obsessed with the destruction. Bolschlachen. The destruction was one phase in my artwork. I am invested in the common denominator and in the common experience between us all. When I interviewed 10 refugee families resettled in America from Afghanistan, Congo, Iraq, Sudan, Somalia, and went back to my studio to highlight and sculpt their stories in suitcases, I wasn't doing destruction in Syria. I was doing Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, and Congo, and I was showing suitcases that belonged to grandchildren of Jewish, Irish, and German refugees that came here a couple clicks back to this country, that came to me with their parents' suitcases and donated to me and said, here's the belongings of yesterday's immigrants. Help tell the stories of today's immigrants. How do you tell that story in a very divided nation? How do you tell that story without dividing up your audience 2 million ways, without diving deep into politics? How could somebody put a headset on and realize that what connects them to a refugee from Somalia and Iraq and Afghanistan is far larger from the stupid differences that they think it divides us all? How do you educate? How do you work towards an inclusive nation of immigrants that is 300 years old? At some point, we all came here on a boat or a plane. There are doorknobs in Damascus and Rome that are older than 300 years old. So how do we understand our place in history as artists? What is our responsibility as artists? Undoubtedly, my anger towards my fellow architects is because they boiled down our profession from a profession that would inspire you as you walk into a big church to a profession that boils down to only aesthetics and beauty. And beauty and aesthetics is important. Trust me, I get it. The work is beautiful, 150 feet. But we cannot boil down our skill as artists to just aesthetics. We have a skill that can connect the world from Afghanistan to Iraq to Ohio to Somalia. We can highlight the common denominator between the human experience. We can tell a story about Ghina, who wears the hijab, but is now a scholar on a full scholarship in a school in Vermont. We can tell the story of Maher, an Iraqi refugee who came and worked every minimum wage job imaginable to you and now is working at Google. That's the power of art. And who doesn't have baggage? We all go through hardship. We all go through challenging times. My brother-in-law happens to be one of the only architects in his area in Sweden. He's completely in demand, extremely in demand. The guy just established 2 companies. He finished several houses. My sister and their kids are living with them. They speak Swedish like no other, running around. He bought a house, and he's now employing and giving back to the host society that welcomed him with open hearts. Right? That's the world that I aspire to, that I want to live in. The Qur'an that I read, the Islam that I read, has a verse in it that says, "O people, we have created you from male and female and made you nations and tribes so that you would recognize each other, work with each other, not build walls between each other, not discriminate based on color and religion and passport color and Volkswagen, right? Recognize each other." That's the Islam that I know. Islam of love and coexistence. If truly my religion was at a conflict with the other religions, you wouldn't see a single church standing next to a mosque for 14 centuries. ISIS does not represent us. They're animals, terrorists. If KKK represent Christianity, then ISIS represent us. They don't. Right? So how do we tell that story? How do we fight back? How do we say, don't paint people with one wide brushstroke? How do we utilize the skills that we have at hand? We are artists, we are architects, we are creatives. We have the tools at hand and we know how to do this. This is a duty in this age to connect our divided society, to connect, to heal the wound in our nation. It is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to put your head down and just mind your own business. We have to stand up. We have to talk. We have to create work that brings people together. That's the nation that I aspire to be in. And that's quite frankly why I stopped being an architect as of this summer, because I believe in what I do and I want to do it more often. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Questions, and I know we're at time, but maybe just 2 or 3 questions if you have any. Or not. We can just go.
Question, please.
So I took a turn through, thank you, Emma.
Over. Syrian out of control. Syrian out of control. We got a Syrian here in Mohamad.
We have a black woman speaking with the Syrian. This is the situation. Thank you for being here. In the gallery, I saw maybe 3 of your paintings.
Oh, yes.
And you did not mention them here, and I was mesmerized, so I don't remember the sequence. But I would love to know where in this progression those paintings fall, and if you might talk about that.
Ahlan wa sahlan. My paintings that you saw in the gallery, I cannot paint worth 2 cents. They are digitally made. So when I don't have 10 million hours to put in sculpture, I pull up my iPad and I connect to home with my apps and my iPad pencil, and I make these paintings. But I'm really enjoying them so much because the technology has evolved so much that allows you to tell that pen you're an oil brush, you're an acrylic brush, and it allows you to mix so many mediums together in ways that you've never done that before, right? That it's not even applicable in real world. You can't do watercolors and oil paints together, but with technology you can. So when I'm on the road, when I'm traveling and I'm itching, like as we speak, I'm itching to be back in my studio. I don't have the time or my tools, so I pull up my iPad and I start making these paintings. Yeah. Another question. Yes, sir.
Well, what did your boss say when you quit? And where's your phone number?
Boy, did I learn that lesson. It's still on my website. My phone number is on my website. Look, my boss, it was a challenge. And I was telling some of my colleagues in the classes a couple days ago, the world is ever changing, and it's very hard for artists to just sustain themselves as artists. So undoubtedly, you have to carve your way out of some sort of job that goes parallel to your art career, right? And I told you, I did that 12 years in secret. When my friends and family kind of pushed me to the outside realm, I came to the world with 12 years worth of work. So the media, of course, would write whatever they want, but you know, my boss would push back, and then the New York Times comes out, and the New Yorker comes out a couple months later, and then the Guardian comes out, and I was like, okay, Mohamad, I don't understand what you're doing, but the world is understanding, so I'm gonna lay back a little bit, you know. And quite frankly, the ugly thing with architects is unless you have built buildings, you don't have a legitimate voice within our profession, and it's an ugly, sad reality. So I had to suck it up and finish that tower in Houston to just point at it and say, look, been there, done that, built that, your way of practice is wrong. to imagine that all my life is dedicated to concrete and glass, and you want me to work 80 hours a week, that's not my place in history. There are thousands of architects that can design you skyscrapers. How many Arab, Muslim, Syrian, grown up in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, but raised in the Midwest in the United States, with a skill that connects the East and the West and can build bridges? We are a handful of people living in the West today. So you realize this is a duty on my shoulder to do this. This is a responsibility to be a voice, to be out there. It's very uncomfortable to share my personal family out there, but I feel it's my only last chance that I have to build these bridges. And I've been giving talks all over. You know, I'm lucky to be in California this time, but you know, a few months ago I was in the deep South, where you know, thank God I've yet to see a wild or a rough reaction, because at this point, as you saw, when I come all out and show you my family, it's hard for somebody to go, well, yo sir, there's man, Mohamad. You know, it doesn't work. If we invest the time to learn about each other and connect with each other, we learn that there's so much in common. And that's what I love about doing this thing. I'm actually an optimist, believe it or not. I believe in investing the time to learn about the other. And it's just like that security guy in the airport, the big dude guy, when I say, I didn't smile, can we take that photo again? He's a human. He's just having a hard day. He's having a tough day. He's seeing like 2 million people pass through. What a job, right? You just poke people and have like, hey, have a good day, man. Thank you. When was the last time you said that to the security agent? Have a good day. Thank you for your service. I'm like, thank you, you're welcome. Nice bow tie. Shall we head back to the gallery, or is that it? Yeah? Okay. All right.